This week, a new pope, but is he conservative or progressive? We'll discuss. And recovering from the disaster, as Australia now faces 3 years of left-wing rule and all that means for our economy and culture, three very smart people with strong ideas about what went wrong for the right side of politics this election and where we need to go from here will join me. Professor James Allan from the University of Queensland, Graeme Haycroft from Red Unions, and Dan Ryan from the National Conservative Institute of Australia. This is the analysis that every right-leaning Aussie who cares about the future of our country needs to watch. G'day Ipswich, g'day Newcastle, g'day Australia. This is episode 410 of The Other Side for the weekend commencing Friday, May the 9th, 2025. I'm Damien Curry. The Other Side is your analysis of the best news and commentary without the woke. Our bias, we always declare it right up front, is sensible centre right. We explore ideas from the conservative right to the classical liberalism to libertarianism, filling the void left by the ABC and mainstream media who view everything through a left-wing lens of big government. We definitely do not expect you to agree with everything that's said on this program because many different things are said. It's about broadening the debate and bringing different perspectives to the conversation. But we do agree on certain things. And that is that socialism and big government are not the answer to our woes, and Australia has become too dependent on both. Most importantly, we pay our own way with your voluntary support via our website, othersidetv.com.au. Please get on there and sign up to get our newsletter and support us if you like what we do, because unlike the ABC, we cannot keep going without your support. A new show drops every Friday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube and Rumble and all good podcast platforms. And clips from our Friday night shows drop throughout the following week, most nights at around 7 p.m. Let's get into it. Before we get into talking about the broad church that is the Australian Liberal Party, let's talk about the original broad church for a sec, the Catholic Church. There's a new pope in town, as you no doubt have heard by now. And why does this matter, you're asking, if you're not Catholic? Well, because the Catholic Church is the biggest and foundational church of Christianity. And Christianity still sets the moral and cultural tone and agenda of the modern Western world, much to the concern of Marxists. Sorry, kids. So all eyes were on this conclave to elect the new pope because Pope Francis was considered one of the most progressive, and not in a good way, popes ever. The new pope, Leo XIV, was Cardinal Robert Prevost. He was born and raised in Chicago and is the first American pope ever, but he's also a citizen of Peru. He's a dual citizen, which makes him the second Latin American pope too. Francis was Argentinian. He's not new to the Vatican or Rome. He's been working there since 2023, brought in by Pope Francis to a top administrative role. So is he progressive or conservative? That's what a lot of people want to know. And the answer is that he's progressive. He's already made it clear that he's into synodality, which is the democratization of the church, having lots of conferences and talk fests and debates and discussions globally about moral issues. Pope Francis even had a synod of synodalities, a big corporate-style gab fest. Many accused Francis of muddying the waters on moral issues like LGBTQI stuff, DEI, climate change, female priests. He even tried to ban the traditional Latin Mass from being said. And this greatly concerned conservatives. So it's not a great sign that Pope Leo will continue all that, or he's saying so. However, conservative commentators say there are some positive signs. The choice of the name Leo is one. Leo XIII, his predecessor in that name, was a 19th century pontiff who was very conservative. Also, the new Pope Leo appeared on the balcony after his election in the traditional red, majestic garb of the church, something that Francis shunned, and this might be a sign of a more traditional conservative-leaning approach. These symbols are important. The red garb symbolises the sacrifice, the blood, the giving of one's life to the new role. And they say when a man becomes Pope, he becomes a new person. We do know that the Catholic Church is in financial trouble, and there was a feeling among cardinals that an American might help on the financial side of things getting things in order for the church. But the important thing to remember is that the church is not the institution, it's the people in it. The 1.4 billion Christians who call themselves Catholic. All right, back to things Australian and things conservative. This week, we are joined by three very wise gentlemen with very solid and sound ideas about what went wrong for the right side of politics in the election on the weekend and where things need to go from here. In the studio, we have Professor James Allan from the University of Queensland Law School, Graeme Haycroft, founder of the alternative non-left-wing professional associations known as the Red Unions, and a man who has had a long history on senior committee roles within the National Party and the LNP in Queensland, and the founder of NatCon, the National Conservative Institute of Australia, and lawyer Dan Ryan. Welcome, gentlemen. It's good to have you all here. What I want to do today is take each of your recent musings and writings and ask you to elaborate on them one by one, and we'll discuss each. So we'll have 10 minutes or so focused on the ideas pretty much of each one of you. Professor James Allan, we will start with you, sir. Your article in The Spectator this week is headlined, "Why the Libs Lost? Is the Broad Church Too Broad?" And you write the following: "What Anglosphere country presently offers right-of-centre voters the least hope of change? I don't think there's much debate that the answer to that is Australia. A Liberal Party that had every opportunity to romp home in last week's election instead imploded and was crushed by an Albanese-led Labor Party, one that had seen living standards drop almost 8% in its first term, that spent far too little on defence, that had been humiliated in its voice referendum to entrench racial division, that despised free speech and half-welcomed pro-Palestinian activists who gave more than a few signs of being anti-Semitic. That had opened the floodgates to over 1 million immigrants, causing house prices to soar. That was in the full-on embrace of climate change zealots, worshipping the altar of impoverishing net zero religion, that oversaw tanking productivity, ever-worsening education results, mushrooming power bills and public servant hires, and that had Australia on a course to hit a national debt of $1 trillion and deficits as far as the eye can see. That was the Albanese Labor Party that our supposedly conservative coalition not only failed to defeat, but by running such an emasculated, incoherent campaign, allowed itself to be crushed by." I wanted to read that first part of your article.
I was trying to be nice to them.
Yeah,
the Libs.
yeah.
I mean, that's about the nicest things I could say about the Libs. It was so terrible, their campaign.
Well, but you've laid it all out there. Like you couldn't have an easier target to beat, right, James?
Well, look, they died on their knees. It would have been much better, in my view, if they just said, we're going to do three things. We're going to pull out of net zero. We're going to slash immigration. I mean, they offered 100,000 cut over 5 years. I mean, it was nothing. Labor let in 1 million people in 3 years. They could have gone and said, we're going back to John Howard levels of immigration. And so they could have done that. They could have fought in the culture wars. The party is riven. And I am deeply disappointed in Mr. Dutton because he just allowed himself to be taken over by the backroom sort of focus group driven campaign advisors. I think in early April, I was calling for them all to be fired. But look, my basic view is, if anyone's seen the old Seinfeld show, there was an episode once where George Costanza was doing so many things wrong in his life that he just did the opposite of every instinct he had.
Opposite George.
Opposite George. If the campaign had just been opposite George and done the opposite of everything they thought, they would have probably won. I mean, it was that bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because the party room is riven and there's just way too many wets, moderates. I don't know if Peter Dutton just hasn't got a backbone. I don't know if the advisor class used pollsters that were so terrible or whatever it was. Ultimately, it's Dutton's fault. He didn't stand up for anything conservative. And the simple truth is they deserve to lose. It would be like losing to the slowest kid in your class in a 100-meter race. That's what they managed to do.
You talked about in your article that there were two theories. One was complete nonsense, and that's the not nonsense one. The nonsense one is the idea that Trump had something to do with all this.
I know. I mean, here's the theory is supposed to be that as soon as Trump announces the tariffs, that's it. No conservative in the world can win. You're just going to lose. Now, we know that's not true because Nigel Farage just had the best result for an insurgent new party since you pretty much have to go back to the 1920s with the Labour Party in Britain. So they won the vast preponderance of the local council seats that the Labour allowed to be held. This Reform Party that didn't even exist a few years ago, they won almost as many votes as Labour and the Conservatives put together. They took out in a by-election Labour's 16th safest seat. They are now 5 or 6 points up ahead in the polls. And both Labour and the Tories tried to say, well, Farage is just Trump. And unlike the idiot in here and the advisor class here and the people in Canada advising Poilievre, Farage just said, well, what don't you like about Trump? You know, he's closed the border. He's dealing with immigration. He's cutting taxes. He's gotten rid of DEI in the military and the bureaucracy. He's fighting the transgender wars. You know, what don't you like about that? And if the answer is, well, you know, he's putting a tariff on your country, well, Farage just made the right point that who is more likely to get a good deal out of Donald Trump? A socialist who's been he and his cabinet have been insulting the man for 4 years, calling him a racist, white nationalist, or me? And it's obvious that Farage would have a better chance to get a deal. The deal that Starmer cut that's just come out as we last night is not a really great deal for Britain. Farage would have done better in getting a better deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. They just ran away from it. They gave up and they ran away.
I think you said we abjectly and completely surrender in your article to the woke mob. Graeme, you've been on the inside a lot. You've seen the machinations. You've seen the arguments between the so-called wet progressive left liberals and the conservative dry right liberals or nationals. How do you see it?
Well, pretty much as James has seen it, but I look back a bit at what caused this. I mean, the party no longer operates as a political party, an institution designed to win elections. It's been taken over by the know-it-alls, the people that constructed this campaign. In the past, they've been fairly good at it. But what came through this time was complete incompetence. I mean, these people, you wouldn't put them in charge of anything. And so the party itself, I mean, Dutton ultimately is at fault. I mean, he could have said, hang on a minute, I'm the leader, I'm doing this.
Take responsibility,
but
take charge, right?
But there's also supposed to be, the party structure is about a parliamentary wing and a counter-party wing, and they're supposed to work together. And the party wing has been completely taken over by factions. They've used little tweaks and little flaws in the constitutions to get power, and they don't know what they're doing. And the broad church of the membership, of which there's only about 25,000 left in Australia.
Yeah, which is astounding all by itself. 25,000 members of that party. And I think the Canadian Conservative Party is like 400,000.
750,000.
Whoa,
So three-quarters of a million.
Just let's look at those numbers. They're very important. When Menzies started the Liberal Party, the population of Australia was about 5 million, 6 million, and it had 60,000 members. So the Menzies Liberal Party today should have 300,000, right? If it's the same extent of operation. And you compare that to Canada, and you do a pro rata between the population of Canada and the number of members that they've got. You come back to about, between 300,000-400,000. So the proper level of a Conservative Party membership, if it was a proper party, and the members had something to do and say, then would be about 300,000. At present, they're 1/10 of that. My Red Union group is almost bigger than it turns over all my money, and we're actually conservative, I might say, which is more than you can say from the Liberal Party. We're bigger than them.
Yeah,
so they have. The members have been excluded from the process, and not surprisingly, they've moved off. They've gone to One Nation, they've gone to myriad of other little smaller parties.
After the break, I want to dive deeper on your theory in a moment. Dan, just quickly from you, we do have to go to a break, but your initial thoughts on what happened Saturday and why?
Well, let me think of the aftermath, because what's clearly not the solution, which has been proposed by many, is to look to the UK and try and David Cameronize the party. I mean, that is the worst possible solution.
Make it more centrist, yeah.
Oh, well, we'll do more.
Left.
Do more than that.
Already left.
Yeah.
But because these guys, they promoted a solution, but they haven't picked up a British newspaper lately, because the British Tory party got decimated last time. And now their leadership, which is always not fantastic, but they've come out against net zero. Their leader, a woman, can define what one is. They're against, mass immigration. If they can say it, why can't the Australian Liberal Party say that? None of those things were said in a clear and explicit way in the lead up to the last election. That's what the election should have been about. That's what future elections will be about. If you want to go back to David Cameron, which no one in Westminster today is proposing as a solution, and use that as the model for Australia going forward, you'll have double the catastrophe that you saw on Saturday night.
All right, that ends our first segment. If you are watching in segments, go to episode 410 of the show and watch the full show. We'll be back in a moment. You may have noticed if you've been overseas on holiday recently that you can log into your streaming services like Netflix or Prime in other countries, but the shows they offer are different and sometimes even better. You're paying good money for those subscription services. Why can't you watch? Well, with a virtual private network or VPN, you can log in from home here in Australia with an internet address from anywhere in the world, and big corporations and big government can't see where you are. Now, to be clear, criminals can still be actively found with police warrants, of course, but the average honest citizen will have their location protected from prying eyes of corporate marketers and government bureaucrats. If you sign up now with private internet access, we think they are the best VPN service out there. That's private internet access. As a viewer of The Other Side, you can get 83% off the price of your subscription and get online for less than $3 a month. Check it out right now. Go to piavpn.com/otherside. That's piavpn.com/otherside. It's a great service and a rock bottom price, and you're helping keep The Other Side going and growing. We're being joined by three very wise gentlemen to discuss where the centre, right and right in Australia should be heading from here. If we put aside the woes of the Liberal Party for the moment and just take a look at the primary vote overall, we can get a sense of how bad or not things really are for the right side of politics. This is a snap from the ABC website on the tally for the primary votes for the major parties. We've got Labor on just under 35% and the Coalition on just over 32%. That means 1/3 of Australians are rejecting the red and blue this time. The Greens sit on just under 12%, which continues to totally astound me. That means 1 in 8 Australians would vote one for a radical far left party. And in some suburbs of Brisbane, it's like 1 in 3 people walk in and put a 1 next to the Greens, which is mind-boggling. And let's give the left about 2/3 of that other vote there, because most of those are for Teals, and we can't possibly claim them to be on the non-left side of politics anymore. And we have then a total of the left with around 55% and the right with a total around 45%. Adding the Coalition, One Nation, Trumpet, and about 1/3 of the others. So, of course, all of this doesn't translate into a proportional distribution of seats in the House of Representatives. When we take a look at how the 151 seats in the House will be distributed based on who won what where, it's been far worse for the Coalition, to say the least. The Liberals and Nationals finishing up so far with only 40 seats in the count, Labor on 89, Independents on 10, and that's with 11 seats remaining in doubt. Some are calling a couple of other seats. So, you know, we've got the Greens on one, possibly with the seat of Ryan in Brisbane staying green. So maybe 95 seats probably for Labor at the end of the day. Of course, the Senate is where the Greens have all their power, and they'll continue to hold the balance of power in the Senate with 11 senators. One big problem now for the Liberal Party is the choosing of a new leader out of a very depleted bunch of talent. Putting the fights between Conservatives and Progressives within the party aside for a moment, just finding one outstanding candidate to lead the party for the next few years has been a challenge. This is not a problem isolated to the right side of politics, I'd say. The talent on the Labor side isn't what it used to be either. The days of the Hawkes and the Keatings and the Howards and the Frasers are well behind us. Joining me in the studio today, we have Graeme Haycroft, founder of the alternative non-left-wing professional associations known as the Red Unions, the founder of NatCon, the National Conservative Institute of Australia, and lawyer Dan Ryan, and Professor James Allan from the University of Queensland Law School. Graeme, I'm going to start with you on this question of talent not being attracted to politics in our country. What are your thoughts on that, and how do we fix it?
Okay, well, the Conservative politicians, in fact, all politicians, they weren't doing that. They'd probably be selling real estate, right? They have got their C-grade people, C-class people, and they always have been, and I'd like to suggest they always will be. But they're an important part of our system. It sort of works, provided there's a core of A-graders. You know, we need A-grade people, and Howard was an A-grader, Menzies obviously was. In the present parliament, you've probably got Canavan, Antic, Price, Hasty. I've run out of names, right? And none of them are actually on the...
Did you say him?
Antic, yeah. There's just not enough. And the problem is you're not going to attract people in because they only pay peanuts. So, at the state level, they're getting 200 grand. You're not going to get an A grade for 200 grand.
They get pretty good pensions, though.
Well, they don't. They're not anymore. They
Not at the
don't.
state
They
level,
used
no,
to.
yeah.
So how do you get the A graders in there? And fortunately, there's a precedent in Canada, and this is how I sort of got onto this after Jim wrote an article about the Canadian Conservative Party. What they do there, they change the whole, if you like, you show me the incentives and I'll show you the results. Now, the incentives in the Canadian system, what happens in Canada is quite simply every member, they pay about 20 bucks Australian to join per year, so it's only sort of a normal amount, but they get to decide who the leader will be. And most importantly, they get to decide whether the leader stays or not.
So the membership directly elects the leader of the party, the membership of the party.
So-
There's 700,000 members. So you're getting already an indication of what the public actually think, the public actually care about.
Exactly. And not only that, you put an A grader in there now, and we've had a few. I mean, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that Dutton was ever an A grader, but he was like a 19 years before he had a crack. And unfortunately, he turned out to be a dud. So you're not going to get the A graders on the basis that I'll go into and I'll put up with the crap of all these bloody C graders and then finally get a run because they've exhausted everyone else. It's 20 years later. They're not going to give up 20 years of their life. But if they can get in there because they've been successful somewhere else, and ordinary people can identify leaders in the country, like, you're in a football team, everyone knows who the captain's going to be, right? We know, we can see them everywhere. So that's the system we need to bring in. And then you totally change the entire dynamic. Instead of having a leader elected by a committee of his peers who all want his job, you've got someone else who comes in essentially with an outside support base, and he can get rid of all the duds out of his cabinet, right? Send them to the backbench, and he can get the people that are going to work and can get on with the job, and he can make strong decisions because he knows that his chicken-livered little colleagues will have no say on his future or her
Okay, but
future.
why didn't this work in Canada, Jim? Just quickly.
What happened?
Well, it has because Polyev is not being removed. He's found a new seat, and so he's continuing.
But he didn't win.
No, he didn't win, but he also took the Conservative vote to a 40-year high. So the big difference between Canada and Australia is Polyev, although he was weak compared to Trump, because he sort of chickened out in the last 2 weeks, but his basic approach was so much better than Dutton. So he took the actual Conservative vote in Canada to a 40-year high. You have to go back to 1988. And so the party membership is not going to replace him. They have actually found a safe seat for him. The guy has said he'll step down, Polyev in Alberta. And just picking up on another thing Graeme said, look at the state level. Amanda Stoker is A grade, and she isn't even in cabinet. Christofouli, it's not just that they have to wait their turn. The C graders don't want the A graders because they're afraid of the A. Yeah. There's no world in which Amanda Stoker should not be in Christofouli's inner cabinet.
No, there isn't. And we've seen, that's Amanda Stoker, former federal senator and junior minister, who is now in the Queensland Parliament, state parliament, has not been given a ministerial position in David Christofouli's government.
Everything Graeme says, right.
All of this organisation, you and I, Dan, have worked in the corporate world a lot. You see this in the corporate world all the time. We've got to have a system where you've got outsiders and you've got that influence coming in from the outside, and people are promoted on talent. We're not getting that inside. You've worked inside the party as well, inside the Liberal Party.
Yeah, I mean, there's structural issues, right? There is an incentive for those who have not done anything professionally to exclude those coming in who have done things and more competent people. There's also another issue where if anyone has spoken out on any issue, written an op-ed, then that's actually to their detriment within the party because people don't want anyone who's actually made a stand on something. So we had a situation, as you might recall, the last election, where a guy who had a view that women shouldn't be in frontline positions and was disendorsed on that basis. Now that's a reasonable position. You can disagree with it or agree with it. But
frontline military fighting frontline.
That's right.
Position. That's all combat roles. That's what he said. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
All he said. It wasn't.
And so why you would disendorse a person on that basis, whereas in the seat of Brisbane, you had the candidate there who was saying that, puberty blockers will be coming back in after 6 months. He wasn't disendorsed.
No,
And I don't
left-wing position.
And to be clear, I don't think either of them should have been disendorsed. If you believe that, believe it. But you know, that is part of the reason why people who make a stand on things aren't welcomed into the party, aren't promoted, and that needs to change. We need, you know, there's a lot of talk about this broad church sort of stuff. It needs to be open to a wide range of people with different views. And at the moment, there's a lot of talk about the broad church, but it really, you know, the party seems to think that its ideal candidate is a, you know, diversity and inclusion hire who works for PwC and zero tolerance. That's kind of the attitude. And if they can just get an army of those, somehow they'll win. The results across the Western world show that that is not the path
it's
to
bland,
success.
it's vanilla, it's not going to work, and it just makes politics an extension of bureaucracy, which is the problem we've got now, and it just keeps growing.
I disagree with you, and I think talking about a broad church is just slogans. I mean, the party is already to the left of center. It's Labour light. We don't want a broad church right now. We want some actual the only way they're going to win is with a conservative leader. If they put Susan Lee in, the party is going to implode. I know when you say, well, do you have
I think it's already imploded.
it's
frankly.
imploded, right? But I mean, any chance they have to recover is not going down that path. So we need a little, Graham's reform is great. I'm just a little bit worried that it's not going to be so easy to pull it off, because these people have a vested interest in not letting members have a say on anything.
Oh, nothing worthwhile is easy,
Right.
but it's relatively simple. Can I make one further comment
Very
about
quickly.
the Alberta
We've got to
thing?
take a break and then we'll come back.
Very
to
important. Poilievre lost his seat in Canada.
Yep.
Right? The Premier of Alberta, I'm not sure what the terms are, she was actually elected as the leader when she wasn't even in the Parliament in Alberta.
That's right.
Yeah.
So she was one of the ones who were voted in by their members. They saw her, you're good, in you go.
Find the talent, get
Boom,
it
boom,
in.
boom.
Yep.
She was the one who found the seat for Poilievre. She would have been tap, tap, tap. I think it's time for you to go and have another job in Paris for us, and your seat's going to become available. Bang, bang.
Yeah.
Because you've got
Graham,
strong
when she
people.
came in, the party was behind in the polls, and when they brought her in, they won a big majority.
She's a strong leader.
Yeah.
She's an A-grader, and that's what we've got to get into our parliament.
All right. Coming back in a moment with more on the other side.
You're watching The Other Side with Damien Coorey, Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most every second Friday. In between, don't miss The Other Side Unplugged, as Damien comments on current news and conducts in-depth interviews with the people who matter whenever the need arises. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month. This is The Other Side.
For conservative and classical liberal and libertarian Aussies, the election was an agonising slow-motion car crash to watch. We all knew things weren't going to end too well for us. We prayed for luck and a miracle, but we never expected it was going to be this bad. And while a lot of blame has been levelled at the feet of Peter Dutton, it's important to remember that until around January, Dutton's star was on the rise. The failure wasn't Dutton. It was Dutton being held back by the nervous Nellies in the party who wanted to play it safe and adopt the small target strategy from January to May. Instead of sticking to classical liberal centre-right policies and standing up for core values with a clear set of messages, well-defined and well-defended, and looking strong and leader-like, the party began to push for Labour-light style messaging. It started to cower to the scaremongering of the left, leaving Dutton looking not softer and warmer and more appealing as they'd hoped, but weak and trapped. Nowhere was this more evident than in the scolding he copped on the Today Show from a teleprompter reader with an attitude.
The opposition leader joins us live now from Adelaide. Pete, good morning to you. Conveniently, you're in the city of churches. Will you be asking for forgiveness from female voters?
I think I am today. Look, I think we've made a mistake in relation to this policy, Sarah, and I think it's important that we say that and recognise it. I think Labor's been able to get away with twisting this.
Peter. This is more than that. This
Sarah,
is quite a backflip. I mean, this was one of your signature policies. If you're making this kind of a mistake during an election campaign, how can you be trusted as Prime Minister? The public does like to hear when you make mistakes and you admit to them, right? But this is something that you could have thought about before. It was clearly not a nuanced approach, this working from home. And it really adds to the argument that you might have a problem with female voters. Obviously, you're trying to target them here. And then when you couple that with disendorsing a New South Wales Liberal candidate, Ben Britton, who made those comments about women not being in the ADF, I mean, it's not the best look for your party. It's not just the working from home that you're walking back from. It's also the public service job cuts, initially targeting 41,000 jobs. Now you're walking back from that. How will you find the billions you need for your Medicare plan?
Well, Sarah, that was always the plan, that there would be natural attrition and a hiring freeze, and that achieved over the 4 or 5 year period the numbers we need. So there's no change.
The plan, but it wasn't the plan. You wanted to cut back 41 jobs. You wanted to introduce working from home. You've walked back from both of those. How can they have both always been the plan? It doesn't make sense.
Well, Sarah, you asked a question about the costing. There's no change to the costing at all, because the original plan of the natural attrition and the freezing was what we'd always had. It's the way in which Labor's contorted that into something else.
It is just agony watching that complete emasculation. He can't push back too hard, although I say he has even more of a women problem. The left have been using that "the Liberals have a women problem" trick for more than a decade now. Same thing every election. Call them sexist, call them racist. But how dumb are we that we haven't worked this out yet, and we keep falling for the same old trap time and time again? At some point, you've got to stand up to the bullies and call it out. Sorry, Sarah, but that's not fair. Our country is in the middle of a productivity slump, and we need to fix that. But we can't fix the debt and inflation and get interest rates down and really help struggling Aussies trying to get into their first homes and manage the terrible inflation. We think there's a bit too much working from home going on among government employees, and we need to dial it back a bit. We've listened and adjusted the policy now to help hardworking mums who benefit from working from home and the flexibility that that affords. And we're going to get the balance right and fix this problem so that everyone benefits. It isn't that hard to stand up for your values and principles as a party if you just do a little work on the messaging and get it right, and stop defending yourself against the bullying attackers on the left. Instead, call them out for what they truly are. It's called fighting and leading. And without it, the Liberals will never win elections. Joining me in the studio today are three very wise men. One of them is the founder of the National Conservative Institute of Australia and lawyer Dan Ryan. Dan, what would you have done in that situation?
Well, it was an aggressive interview, obviously, and you sometimes get those. But, I mean, look, the Labor Party can't define what a woman is. There's all this talk about, the Liberal Party's woman problem. But if they actually summed up the courage to talk to real women, instead of fumbling in the dark trying to work out what one is, they might discover there's actually quite, even the teal yoga mums are quite receptive to an idea that mass immigration should be cut. We saw in the eastern suburbs of Sydney recently sort of chaotic scenes with very aggressive selective examination where they had to bring in the riot squad. Mums worry about mass immigration pushing their own kids out of the housing market. Young women in Europe and in Australia do worry about their own personal safety in increasingly diverse suburbs. So those arguments can be made in a sensible, serious way, in an adult way, with the gravitas of a major political party behind you. And if you don't make those arguments and you don't make them clearly, then only the fringe makes those arguments, political fringe makes them. And the yoga mums in the eastern suburbs and the nice parts of town aren't going to listen to those people, but they will listen to the argument if it's put in a professionally competent way.
Yes, and strongly. Okay, I want to just play a clip from the IPA, Institute of Public Affairs podcast. This is John Roscombe interviewing from the IPA, interviewing Tony Abbott just late this week. Let's roll that particular clip now, if we can, Aaron.
We keep on saying, don't worry, don't go back and find out what we believe in. Don't have the arguments between the left and the right. Don't talk about why we abandon freedom of speech and freedom. And we've just had 3 years of nothing happening. Peter Dutton saying, keep quiet, don't rock the boat, and we'll just get in to government. So I'm going to push back and say, why don't we actually say this is really, really bad? Yeah. And we almost have to, well, some have said burn it down. I wouldn't go that far, but say start again rather than just saying, if we just do the campaign a bit better, if we have a slightly different leader who's a bit more likeable, everything will be okay.
I don't want to minimise the scale of the defeat, but on the other hand, I don't want people to lose hope. And it is important to remember that what seems dire today can change quite quickly. For instance, it's only 18 months back that it was Labor that had completely lost touch with the people by supporting the divisive race-based voice.
And the Liberals didn't take any lessons from The Voice. Tony Peter Dutton never spoke about The Voice. He sidelined Jacinta. He refused to talk about culture. He had 17 different positions on welcome to country. Again, aren't you just saying that don't worry, it'll be okay when it won't be?
No, I would never say after a defeat of this magnitude against a government which was so eminently beatable that nothing needs to change.
You would have won. But move on.
But I do want to reassure people that there is hope, that the next election is winnable, that the Liberal Party does have a future. I think we'd built a good foundation. The problem was that this year I don't know whether we became complacent because we thought we were in front.
I'd argue we became safe.
And therefore risk averse.
Yes.
Risk averse.
And that's what MPs have been talking to me about since Saturday.
This year, really from January on, we failed to pick fights. And when we did pick fights on, for argument's sake, trying to get public servants back into the office, as soon as we came under a bit of pressure, we pulled back.
Sure did. Joining us on the panel, we have Graeme Haycroft, who is the founder of Red Unions, but also a former National Party Queensland senior committee member and Liberal National Party of Queensland committee member. Graeme, John Roscombe to me there on track. Tony Abbott making all the usual, with all due respect, making all the usual bloody excuses. Sorry, but it infuriates me.
Yes. Peter.
Yeah.
That was the point where the people realised that Peter Dutton was not a leader. And Tony's just sort of covering up the harsh reality of it. Look, there's two things in elections that people look for. The first is they want an identification with the leader, that the leader is of their same mind. Right? That's the first thing. And the second thing is they want to know that that leader will fight for them. Now, how did Dutton go on those two principles in that particular interview with the lass? He failed both of them. You need to understand how important these things are. And as I said before, we need to look at restructuring the Constitution to get the right leaders in. But it ultimately comes back to leaders understanding what needs to be done and said in the elections. And Dutto sure as hell didn't know what to do, and his advisors were even worse.
Professor James Allan from University of Queensland Law School, your thoughts on that?
I don't disagree with anything, but I have a slightly different take. Look, donations to political parties, that's public information in the US. The legacy media leans left to an incredible extent, 9.5 to 1, something like that. Every time you appear on the legacy media, you know that they don't want you to win. There are the odd exception, but not very many. And Dutton needs to watch how Poilievre in Canada handles the press. Or Trump. Say what you will about Trump. He knows that the press hates him, and he has completely marginalized them. And poll after poll now, they're the least trusted.
Dutton was doing that originally. He took down an ABC reporter early on. It was doing very well, and then, of course, it all changed.
All he had to say was, look, Donald Trump won the preponderance of married women voters. He didn't win single women, but he won the preponderance of married women voters. And all he had to say is, we are only dealing with Canberra. It's only Canberra public servants who are going to be forced back to work. They don't vote for us anyway. You would have to come into work every day, whoever her name was. You could not do the job from home. And what you're doing is you're undermining the wealth of your children. And I'm not going to sit here and listen to you defend working from home. It's a disaster. But he didn't do anything. It was just awful. And I don't know if he has beliefs anymore. I used to think Peter Dutton had beliefs. If he did, he became supine. As Graeme said, the worst possible way to deal with the press is to fumble around and apologize. Never apologize for any policy you're taking to the voters.
All right.
Unless you're Peter Beattie. He got away with it.
Peter Beattie was very good at apologising.
After the fact, though, right? After the fact.
He was the best.
Those were the days when in crisis management we would say, an apology would shock people. It'd be like, oh, look, they apologised. Aren't they good? These days it doesn't work like that anymore because the people are getting a bit used to it. All right, we'll be back in a sec. I want to tell you about a fantastic initiative that's happening out of Canberra right now. It's called the Awards for Men in Leadership. The awards are given out on International Men's Day, which is November 19. They're designed to combat the increasing denigration of masculinity in our culture and the widespread discrimination against males inside and outside the workplace. The goal is to lift the well-being of boys and men and facilitate healthy collaboration between men and women. The awards for men in leadership are designed to inspire men to make a bigger contribution to family and community and to elevate positive male role models. There's a $10,000 scholarship for studies and professional development, public recognition for the winners, and a year of mentorship and executive coaching for each recipient. It's targeted at young men and middle-aged guys who fought their way up from some other kind of disadvantage. This is the third year of the awards and it'll be the biggest yet. To find out more, just search up the Awards for Men in Leadership on Facebook.
The Other Side is Australia's best completely independent news commentary YouTube channel, bringing you up to speed and diving deep on the issues that matter most. Our fortnightly news catch-up and deep dive show, The Other Side with Damien Cooley, drops every second Friday night. And our new random The Other Side Unplugged content will appear whenever we have high-quality, meaningful content that matters to bring you. To keep producing and growing, we rely on support from ordinary viewers like you who care about the quality of news and commentary in Australia. The best way to support us is by becoming a member of the exclusive side on our website and contributing a small amount each month to the cause. You can do so for less than $5 a month, and we'll drop you an email when we post new content so you never miss a thing. Check out our website at othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Or scan the QR code on your screen now with your phone camera. This is The Other Side.
This is a delicious carton of chocolate milk, great for an energy and protein boost. And this is a nice kombucha drink with great health benefits. This one is preferred by rugged working class Australians, you know, tradies, farmers, people who live on the land or in the suburbs, the real people who make the country tick, the engine of Australia. And yes, more men than women do prefer that. And this product is preferred by inner city types, people who have sedentary jobs and don't want too much sugar in their diets and who don't need as much protein as dairy provides. They're hardworking too, but they have to spend most of their day using their brains while sitting at laptops. They're knowledge workers and they want good gut health to keep their brains working. And yes, more women than men will go for the kombucha. Both of these products are good products. They are marketed to their respective customers and they sell well. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the is Damien on about here? This is surely not some lame sponsorship ad. And you'd be right. These two drinks represent today's Liberal Party, the two dominant groups in the party, each with their own ideas, each able to win and thrive in their own markets, but they are very, very different products. They have some overlap. They're both drinks. They're both delicious to their own target markets. But look what happens when I do this. Cheers. Oh, God. That is just disgusting. Disgusting. Nobody's going to buy that. These two products, ladies and gentlemen, are different and they do not belong in the same glass. They are incompatible. They are not two products in the same category filling some kind of broad church of products. They are just simply not similar enough to be mixed without becoming far less than the sum of their parts and therefore unmarketable and unsellable. The people who drink chocolate milk are not going to buy this stuff, nor are the people who want a healthy kombucha drink going to buy this stuff. So the market share is plummeting. New chocolate milks have emerged with richer, creamier, sweeter recipes and people are shifting to them. One nation, family first. New health drinks have emerged with even more benefits and tasting even more delicious to the market. The teals. The only way for these two drinks to survive in the market is to present themselves honestly to the public for what they are. Because if they try to mix it up under one product and one brand, nobody's buying. And the Liberal Party is trying to do exactly that. I'm on many chat groups with a lot of people smarter than me, but two of them in particular have stood out to me this week. One's a group of conservative Australian thinkers with many Liberal Party and ex-Liberal Party members. Another one is of an inner city electorate's Liberal Party campaign team. What I realise is that these people don't just have minor differences. They disagree fundamentally at a deep values level. They are not the same at a very fundamental level, and they cannot coexist and win an election. They are speaking at complete cross purposes. And this is why I say that the Liberal Party in its current form, in my humble opinion, is finished. It needs to become two separate parties. Peter Dutton is a chocolate milk guy, and he was going great with the chocolate milk crowd because the chocolate milk crowd are the people who watch this show. They're largely unrepresented in modern Australian politics, and there are a lot of very smart people who think that if a party would just focus on them, like Reform UK and the Trump Republicans, they'd win it in a landslide. But the kombucha people got nervous. Pete was doing well by Christmas and on track for victory. Then the kombucha people said, mix in a little kombucha, or we're going to lose the election. In a lot of kombucha seats. You're ahead. You're doing well. A little kombucha ain't going to spoil your chocolate milk. Oh, yes, it is. Nobody wants to drink this Frankenstein stuff. And that's what happened. The question is, what does the Liberal Party do now? Three men in the studio who don't necessarily all share my strong view on the future of the Liberal Party being totally doomed. Graeme Haycroft, the founder of the alternative non-left-wing professional associations known as the Red Unions, Professor James Allan, University of Queensland Law School, and Dan Ryan, a founder of the National Conservative Institute of Australia. Gentlemen, am I wrong? Dan?
Well, to extend your analogy, I actually think there needs to be a new recipe because it is not the case that Conservatives or the centre-right haven't been able to reach new constituencies across the world. Boris Johnson and Theresa May both famously won deep red wall seats in the UK.
Meaning former Labor.
Former Labor seats. Donald Trump was able to win seats that hadn't voted Republican since the days of Abraham Lincoln, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be a rethinking of
But that's chocolate milk.
No, it's different to the Howard era formula, and the right in Australia really needs to think and look around long and hard at why those things work. It's not even arguing the point strongly and cutting in the public sector or what Dutton was arguing for there. It's rethinking things like trade, immigration, and foreign policy. The Howard era formula that we need 100% manufactured goods coming in from China duty free because supposedly Adam Smith was in favour of that is crazy talk. You will not have a manufacturing industry in Australia again. It won't be good for the people who drink oat chocolate. The idea that over the last 30 years our foreign policy has been a success by invading, in a liberal interventionist way, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, God knows where else. That is not prudent and is about as popular as your combination nation drink. Yeah. And on immigration, we have got to, like the UK Tories and like the Americans and others, we need to just go to incredibly low numbers, a pause for a couple of years. Australia needs a bit of me time. We have great magic culturally here. We can assimilate people to a certain extent, but we can't do it with the numbers that Anthony Albanese has brought in the last couple of years, and we can't do it by just trimming the edges like was proposed by Peter Dutton.
All right, we're getting a bit off topic. I mean, coming back to the point, which is, can the Liberal Party survive as a unified party when you've got two very different, very distinct groups within that party, Graeme?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I've got to do is understand the constituencies. Who does the Labor Party represent, and who should the Liberal Party represent? In America and England, the American Republican Party has become the Workers' Party. And Farage's constituency, fundamentally, is workers.
Yeah.
And in Australia, the checkout chick in Woolies, she voted no.
We're not talking about the checkout chick. With the kombucha, checkout chick in Woolies isn't drinking the kombucha. The person drinking the kombucha is the inner city teal yoga mum, right? So, and dad. So where are they? How are they ever going to mix with this lot?
Well, they're not.
They're not.
But
that's Susan Lee. She's being proposed as the new leader.
Believe it or not, it's Kim Wilson, the checkout chick. I mean, we don't look. The data is clear around the world. Rich people now vote left. Yeah. And if you are aiming for the rich inner city seats, you are not going to win the election. And they have sophisticated data from the last election in the US. And the three biggest issues, all close together, were inflation, immigration, and culture war issues. And you've got half the Liberal Party saying, we don't want to talk about what a woman is. You know, it's crazy. That actually won Trump a whole bunch of districts just by saying we're not having transgenders competing in women's sports. It was a phenomenally important thing to say. Peter Dutton was gifted a perfect opportunity, and he said, well, he just fumbled it around. And he had to go back and focus group to decide about Welcome to Country at Anzac Day.
Yeah.
A guy I want to vote for knows instinctively that no acknowledgement of country at Anzac Day. If you don't know that, Peter, you shouldn't have been leading.
Well, then how can he say it? How can he stand up to the Sarah Arbos of the world? How can he
can't
do
say
anything
that-
when he's being told by the kombucha people to shut up? Graham,
you're
the kombucha people have to leave.
They do.
Well, now what you've got to do is you've got to understand the constituency. The constituency who are conservative, the checkout chicken Woolies voted no in the voice referendum. She's conservative. She wants a continuation of the Australian values. That's what conservatism is, not progressive change. So the market.
But I'm not talking about her. She's a chocolate milk drinker. She's not drinking the kombucha. I'm talking about the kombucha people. They've got to leave the party, or the party finishes.
These people
How can you
here-
put them together?
I think you're both saying the same thing.
No, I'm saying something quite different. This group is actually 10 times bigger than what the Liberal Party thinks it is.
We don't want those people.
Forget about it.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want those
you
people.
move
But
across
why?
the-
But Susan Lee is one of these. So why is she being proposed as the next leader of the party?
It's
Well,
worse
she's
than
the
that.
accidental unit buyer.
It's half the party.
You mustn't forget
Half the
that.
party room are these people. That's the problem.
Look,
Yes, I've seen them.
the party
They're on the
room.
chat groups.
But Damien, like one of the additional strands in Trump's election winning formula was, make America healthy again, right? You've got to. So no, but you can reach out to different constituencies that may have not traditionally voted for you if you properly rejig things and rethink things, right? So at the moment, the current formula in inner city seats in Australia, the Howard era formula has meant housing prices have gone through the roof, and what that has meant is you've got two groups that's created. You've got a group which now has post-materialist concerns, teal voters, who their houses go up magic and they don't break a sweat. And then you've got another group of young people who can't get into the housing market, and they think this system's rigged. Let's flip the monopoly board. The Green voters say that, but also people on the right, like Tucker Carlson is not a green nut, and he says, look, if the system is not producing a reasonable prospect for a 23-year-old or 24-year-old to buy a property and start a family, I want to burn the system down. So there needs to be a rejigging of the right.
Explain this. Trump won the under 30 vote, and Poilievre won the under 35 vote. Trump lost the over 65 vote. And Poilievre did very, very badly with old people.
Yep.
And yet in this country, we can't win the young vote because we don't believe in anything. The real problem for this group of people is they don't have any values or views. If we're going to be honest, the worst thing that happened to young people were the 2.5 years of COVID lockdowns brought to you by the Liberal Party.
Sure.
The biggest time, you got the more asset inflation than any time in our history. It was the best time to be a billionaire.
Yep.
And it's very hard for the Liberal Party to say, look, the real problem here is asset inflation brought to you by us because we decided to copy the Communist Chinese Party approach to locking people down.
These are the things the stories that have to be told. These are the messages that have to be gotten out there. And I can't see how they can be gotten out there when you've got people like this reining it in. Let's just have a look at some of these headlines that we've had from the past week. Peter Credlin wrote in The Australian, things are not as bad as they seem, she says. Howard had a huge winning margin like Albo in his third win in 2004. Everyone said Labor would be out for a decade. Then, of course, Rudd won in 2007 and Howard even lost his seat. But this is different, I think, because we've never seen a Liberal Party with such disparate values trying to hold itself together. Credlin says in her piece that you can't have a shift left or a shift right. I really rarely think she's wrong. I think she's wrong on that one. The party needs both a shift left and a shift right, in my view, and a complete split into two groups. Let's have a look at the moderates and progressives and what they've been saying. Ken Wyatt warns Liberals must change after election loss or risk becoming the lesser party. A former Liberal elder who spectacularly quit the party after leaving federal parliament has lashed his previous colleagues, urging them to wake up and become more inclusive in the wake of another bruising election result. And then we have retiring Senator Linda Reynolds with this headline. Retiring Senator Linda Reynolds criticises Liberal Party after heavy election defeat. Retiring Liberal Senator Linda Reynolds has labelled the party's federal election campaign a comprehensive failure. partly attributable to its lack of effort in increasing female representation. I should point out that this is all ABC News stuff, these articles, okay?
Of course.
But, so it's hardly balanced in any way, shape or form, but it's, you know.
Why would you take political advice from people who hate you? I mean, I never understand why anyone cares what the Guardian and the ABC says. They hate the Liberal Party.
Yes, but these people are in the party. These are the confidential people who stand up and say, Peter, you have to stand there in front of that Channel 9 reporter and you have to take your medicine. You can't speak up against it. You can't say all the things that James has been saying or Graham's been saying or Dan's been saying.
Can we do some arithmetic, please? There's a constituency in Australia, and it's in America and it's England as well. You take all the workers in big business who are essentially conservative workers, all the workers in small business, add them in together, at 80% or probably 20% of teachers, 80%, 70, 60% of nurses. You've got a constituency of conservative thinking people, which is about 60% of the population. The workers have traditionally been the Labor Party, but they abandoned them 20 years ago. The Labor Party is the party of the people who look to the government for their living and for their succour.
And human rights barristers. It's a combination.
Well, there's not that many human rights.
No, but you know, that
voters,
ethos. That ethos.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a sufficient majority to win. You don't have to worry about the kombucha people. You let them go. There's no point spending any money in wealthy former blue ribbon seats to help convert Greens and Teals to Labor.
No, fully agree. But are they going to go? That's the question. This is why I'm saying you've got to split the party.
But you go to the Labor seats.
You can't not worry about them. They're in the party room, Graham. They're there.
I
want to do something with them.
I want to win every seat in Australia. All right. I think you have to make a pitch for every seat in Australia. You can win a Melbourne seat. You can win a Brisbane seat, but it can't be the old formula. Okay.
Yeah.
It cannot be the old formula. And I think you need to. The kombucha set may have sound idea on many things. For example, the nice little markets that I attend on a Sunday morning under, in the greenest booth in Australia, with a federal, state, and local member. They want to pay in cash. They're not huge fans of the COVID era stuff. They're small business people. They're crunchy conservatives in a sense, right? You can make a pitch to them. You may not be successful, but if you go to them and simply say, we need to rehash the Howard era, with all due respect, or rehash the Tony Abbott era, you are not going to be successful. No, because it demonstrates a lack of thinking about what their real conditions today.
I think you can get the message across. I think you can do messaging that appeals to all of them. I'm just saying you can't do the messaging and get it out there if you've got people inside the party saying, don't do that. Sorry.
Distinguish between Dan's point. It's all right to say you want to win every seat. But in a democracy, there's no country in the world where you can actually run a set of policies that tries to win every seat. Nobody tried to win California as a Republican for the last 30 years. And there's no Democrat who's down there really trying to win Texas, or let's say Utah. You have to structure your policies to get 60 to 65% of the population. The thing about Graham's point about directly chosen leaders by the party base is organically it would take these people out. Because the party, they don't have enough votes.
That's my point.
And so you don't have to set out to get them. If you directly elect a leader, we would be the dominant party within 15 years.
Well, they can have their own party. They can join the Teals, right?
Yeah,
or the Teals aren't a party.
The Teals will be destroyed as soon as we get rolling blackouts, which are coming.
The other side doesn't get more than $1 billion of taxpayers' money to bring you news from a centre-right perspective like the ABC does to bring you news from a left-wing perspective. In fact, we don't get a red cent from the government. We need voluntary donors and supporters like you to keep going and growing. And we hate asking for charity, so we've done a deal with what we think is the world's best VPN, virtual private network service. It'll keep you and your family truly safe without slowing down your internet speeds, and you can watch Netflix or other streaming services using your regular accounts with them as if you're viewing from any country in the world. And you can sign up for less than $3 a month and get a whopping 83% off the normal price. Just go to piavpn.com/otherside to sign up and get more info. That's piavpn.com/otherside. I did want to just touch on Nigel Farage and what happened, because while the Liberal Party was busy getting thrashed because of its inability to actually come up with a strong message, the Reform UK Party achieved a historical milestone, which we cannot ignore. This is just enormous. Let's have a look at how the UK's, because what they won 10 councils, sorry, they secured 10 councils, control of 10 councils across England, hundreds of council seats. I think it was 600, 700 seats. And they won a by-election for the national seat of Runcorn and Helsby, overturning a substantial Labor majority.
16,000 votes, their 16th safest seat, Labor.
Yeah.
If those results hold up at the next general election, Nigel Farage and Reform, this is pollsters talking, will have a massive majority. So this is a once in 100 years. It's like when Labor came in and pushed out Liberals in the British Parliament in the 1920s. And Farage, first of all, would shun both those drinks for a nice pint of beer,
Yeah,
which he
fair
does
enough.
openly.
Fair enough.
And he has a cigarette, and he hangs out with normal people. He has a really nice common touch. But what you need to realize about Reform is we can't do it in Australia because they have first past the post.
Yes.
And we have, I don't mind compulsory voting. It doesn't bother me at all. But preferential voting is a protection racket for the two main parties. And there's no other countries that do it except Nauru or some South Pacific island. And there's a reason other countries don't do it. You cannot actually.
I want to talk about that. Let's have a chat. But let's have a look at Nigel Farage's victory as ITV News saw it.
It's been a good night for Nigel Farage as his Reform Party seizes the parliamentary seat of Runcorn and Helsby from Labour.
For the movement, for the party, it's a very, very big moment indeed. Absolutely. No question. And it's happening right across England.
Elsewhere around England, more than 1,600 council seats were up for grabs across 23 local authorities. There are also elections for 4 regional mayors and 2 local mayors. Also a good result for Reform on this front, as their candidate and once upon a time Conservative MP, Andrea Jenkins, became Greater Lincolnshire's first elected mayor.
The rebuilding starts here, and I think, look, British people are back of the queue, and I think they've had enough. So my policies will be centred around local people.
The rise of Reform not only poses a threat to Labour, but also for the Conservative Party, who say they were anticipating a very difficult night.
Okay, so here's how it finished up numbers-wise for Reform. Reform secured 677 council seats, a net gain of 648, and gained control of 10 councils. This includes taking councils from both Conservative and Labor control. We've got this chart up now. The blue are the council seats won. Sorry, the dark full colours are the number of council seats won, and the lighter colours are the number. The change in the council seats for that particular party. So Reform is there in teal green. They've picked up 648 new seats. The Conservatives in blue have lost 635. Wow. Okay. Any thoughts on that, Graeme? Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to be clear that there's a lot of talk about restructuring the party. The party, whichever party captures the best ideas will win. And the difference with Reform is that it's focused on the consequences of mass immigration in Britain, which the Tories in the last, when they were in power, famously did not. I mean, the Tories, when they were in power, of 12 of the last 20 years, allowed more people to migrate to the United Kingdom than in the last 1,000 years. So that's crazy talk. So despite all Boris Johnson's, lovely rhetoric about taking back control, they simply didn't do it. That's what Reform has captured. The other aspect is this is not just a reheated Thatcherism, right? There's much more of an economic nationalist edge to what those guys are proposing.
Right.
And that has not happened here. We still hark back to sort of Peter Costello and Paul Keating endlessly, and we need to rethink our economic framework because people on the left and right will vote radical if their economic circumstances are not changing. And people need to recognise that. And I think, with respect, some of the over 65s that are still in that sort of Hawke-Keating-Howard era haven't yet adjusted to the times, which is why they sort of object to and don't vote, vote for the new parties or the new right.
Graeme, sorry, just on the preferential voting thing too. I want to come back to that, but I love that point. Sorry, the preferential voting thing that Jim raised before.
Jim's right. So getting a new party started and operational is very difficult because of the preferential system. So any genuine, sensible reform, doable reform, has to be to reform the existing party. In other words, you change the constitution. Now, the constitution changes will be determined by the delegates.
The party constitution, yeah.
The party constitution.
Yeah.
That's the delegates all over the country, not
But
the central
you want that
executive.
direct election of the leader. But
There's a number of other changes that need to be as well. You've got to remove the minority control groups.
Right.
There's a few things, but there's only about half a dozen things that need to be changed, and it will dramatically change it. And all of the changes would be supported by the delegates and the members that are left. There's only 25,000 left. And the median age, by the way, is 73. I'm an old person.
Right.
I'm actually a member.
Median age is 73.
Oh my
You
God.
better explain what that means for anyone who's been educated in Australia in the last 15 years. They won't know what median means.
But what this means is that there is a core of about 25,000 people, probably 20,000, who understand how a party works, and they're in the regions, and they're the basis of a party structure, which is pretty good by and large. It's just been captured at one end. And that's fixable. And in fact, I'm doing it. We've got a group together now, and we're going to write the amendments to the LNP Queensland one. We'll use that as a model and take it all throughout Australia. So if you're interested out there, get in touch with us. We're working.
Can I just want to say one other thing? Dan is totally right that the Reform Party in Britain's main critique has been immigration. But don't also forget, the first day that they won these elections last week, every council controlled by Reform said we're firing every DEI officer, and every single employee will no longer be working from home. They didn't run on these issues and run away the way Dutton did. They have actually stood up to them, and people voted for them. So it's not just immigration is big, I agree with that, but also transgender stuff, DEI stuff, working from home. Half the Liberal Party thinks you can't win on those culture issues. Mark Stein once said, everything is downstream from culture.
Absolutely.
How can you explain to people the importance of small business if they've been indoctrinated in universities and all they think is Marxist stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
You first have to fix the culture. You have to explain to them why a small, vibrant market economy matters. You can't just all of a sudden start making those arguments. And we give in on every culture fight.
That's
going.
Brilliant.
We won't fight on anyone.
No, that's exactly right.
Really,
We've got to be prepared to have
really,
that fight. And
really
we didn't have
pisses
that
me
fight.
off.
And we've heard Abbott say it. We've heard Howard say it. I think. Was it Howard? No, Abbott mainly.
The guys working here, they don't get to work from home. I don't get to. Why should you get to work from home?
Well, one day a week, maybe it's okay.
You get
but,
to
I mean, you
learn
gotta
a
have
new
to be
sourdough
your
recipe.
boss or whatever. It's like it's not for anyone but that employer to decide. I think, and he was only talking about government employees anyway. So
articulate that.
Anyway, all right. So I think that brings us around. We are out of time, unfortunately. I'd love to keep talking. We've got to have a discussion about preferential voting because I'm not 100% sure that I thought it helped minor parties, but anyway, it apparently doesn't. So we'll talk about that on another show when we have a bit more time. But we are unfortunately out of time for tonight. Folks, if you like this show, please support us. Get onto our website, othersidetv.com.au, othersidetv.com.au. The other way you can support the show is to tell all your friends about it. So keep that word. We are growing significantly. We are making an impact on the media landscape in Australia now, and we intend to keep doing so. So keep supporting us. There's a lot more that can be done, and I think now it's going to be more important than ever that we get on board and do it. So do join us. Smash those subscribe and like buttons everywhere you can. Make comments everywhere you can. Have a debate on our channels and platforms, and enjoy. All right, we'll see you next week for episode 411. Bye for now.
The Other Side with Damien Coorey is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most every second Friday. In between, don't miss The Other Side Unplugged, as Damien comments on current news and conducts in-depth interviews with the people who matter whenever the need arises. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month.